Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. At this time, I'd like to have a moment of silence for Dr. Kish, our former superintendent who passed away recently. Thank you. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Vance-Clemens,
Here.
Mrs. Cullen,
Here.
Mrs. Dolan, Ms. Kildare,
Here.
Mr. Kraus,
Here.
Mr. Rice, Ms. Thompson,
Here.
Mrs. Walters,
Here.
Dr. Yarnell.
Here. Madam President, before we get to questions and comments from the guests, I would ask the board to consider amend the agenda to add under the personnel portion of the agenda a motion to approve a resolution regarding employee number 8841 and employee number 7800.
Yes, thank you. I'll make that motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Cullen. Questions or comments from board members? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 8-0, so we will amend the agenda to include that item. Thank you. Okay, public comment? Pennridge School Board welcomes public comment. According to Policy 903, we remind everyone of the following. Public comment shall be limited to 3 minutes unless otherwise specified by the board. Participants must be recognized by the presiding officer and note their name and municipality. All statements shall be directed to the presiding officer rather than to individual board members, district employees, or members of the public. A speaker may speak once during each comment period. Please note that these sessions are designated for comments. To protect the confidentiality and privacy rights of all members of our community, the board encourages members of the public to direct any comments regarding particular individuals, such as students or district employees, privately to the superintendent or other appropriate administrators or board members, or to communicate with the board and superintendent privately by sending an email to psdschoolboard@pennridge.org. Questions raised and not addressed may be followed up at a later time. I just want to remind you that when speaking about individuals, whether you use their name or not, that still counts. Thank you. The first on the list, Lindsay Herrera, Sellersville.
Forgive me, I clicked on this, so you're going to
Oh,
go
come
here.
on,
Okay.
sorry. Come on up to the podium, and then there's a little, it looks like a face speaking, and if you just push that button, it'll light up. That one?
Yes.
My name is Lindsay Herrera, and I live in Sellersville Borough.
Can you speak up a little bit, please?
Lindsay Herrera, and I live in Sellersville Borough. I have to pardon the uniform. I work third shift, so I'm actually going to work after I leave here. My concern that I would like to find out some more information on is in regards to the sister schooling programs that we have currently going on. I would like to know what our short-term, mid-term, and long-term goals are to rectify the situation. I personally believe that it's not productive for children to be separated within their households, going to different schools, and I think it poses a lot of physical safety as well as emotional issues. And I would like to know how that plans on being addressed on a more permanent basis, because sister schooling can't go on forever. But it's been a few years, so that's really why I'm here tonight.
Okay, thank you. Answer the questions and comments at the end of the comment period, just so you know.
Yes.
Any other questions or comments? That was the only one I had signed up. No? Okay. Thank you for sharing your comments. I think we're going to be looking at that, and I asked Dr. Bolton if he has your contact information so we can follow up with you regarding the answers to your questions. So, is there anything you wanted to add?
Sir, you know, we've had a conversation. I'll have someone follow up again to answer some more of your questions.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, the first up is the consent calendar. Is there anything that board members want voted on separately? Okay. Then I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar, items A through H. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, seconded by Dr. Yarnell. Questions or comments from board members?
I think it might be, is it not I? There's two after G, so I'm not sure. I just want, before we go. at least
Oh, they're
Oh,
both
I'm sorry.
combined under H, that's why.
I beg your pardon, sorry.
No, that's okay. Any other questions or comments from board members? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0. Okay, student liaison report.
Hello, I'm Georgia Dolan, Corresponding Secretary of Student Council. I'm very excited to be here tonight. Right now, the only update that we have is we had one meeting so far this year, and we voted on and approved our homecoming theme to be the Wizard of Oz. That is the only update I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, the next thing on the agenda is the President's report. I have 2 items this evening. One is an update on negotiations. Both parties have been working together to develop an agreement that is fair for everyone. We believe we are in the end stages of getting that accomplished. And the second item I have for you is the 6-year capital projects plan. In an effort to develop long-term financial planning to keep the district on solid fiscal footing for the foreseeable future, the board asked the administration to develop a 6-year plan for capital projects, comparing the needs of the district with the funds available to meet those needs. In 6 years, our debt payments will drop by $6 million on an annual basis, followed by other significant drops over the next several years. If we plan responsibly and do not borrow money, we have the ability to save and fund major expenses as we go without borrowing money or raising taxes. With the incredible record keeping of our maintenance department, they were able to give us a strong sense of the upcoming maintenance needs of the district, so we could balance the $8 million we had in our capital fund with the needs over the next 6 years. Together, we were able to prioritize the needs of the district along the 6-year timeline while addressing more cosmetic concerns after the drop. This gives the board, in concert with the administration, the ability to plan for that drop and prioritize the major projects and expenses going forward. Within the 6-year plan, we were even able to budget for air conditioning 3 large spaces at all elementary schools in the next year, so classes can rotate through those areas on hot days and minimize the amount of time students are working in excessive heat for an estimated cost of $1 million. The cost of air conditioning all 7 schools is estimated to cost close to $13 million and would take several years, so we wouldn't be able to condition all of the schools at once. This was a creative solution suggested by Dr. Bolton to get air conditioning into all buildings at one time and within the budget. Addressing the drainage issues and field leveling issues for our grass fields across the district was also something we were able to include in the budget. We would like as many students as possible to have the opportunity to participate in extracurricular activities. Superintendent's report.
Thank you, Ms. Baines-Clemens. This is my first superintendent's report, so I have more than 2 items. I promise after a few years, maybe I'll get down to 2. So it's been a wonderful first 3 weeks. I've spent a lot of time learning the community and meeting as many people as possible. I just want to say thank you to the board, to the administration, to the parents, and especially the students who have introduced themselves as I've been around the community and welcomed me to the Pennridge community. I'm thrilled and honored to serve as your superintendent. Tomorrow, we welcome 22 brand new teachers into the Pennridge family. They spend 3 days this week beginning their induction work. Next week, 715 teachers and staff are back for their 3 days of in-service and getting the classrooms ready for our 7,052 students who return on September 4th. It's a busy and exciting time in the district. I have 4 exciting student items to share. The first is I'm pleased to report that we had 2 seniors from the class of 2018 who recently have been notified that they achieved National AP Scholar status this year. Emily O'Brien and Michael Reed. Is Emily here with us this evening?
She did not make it tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Ferry. To be named a National AP Scholar, a student must receive an average score of at least 4 on every AP exam they take and must score 4 or higher on at least 8 exams. Emily scored an average of 4.5 and took 8 exams in May. She will be attending the University of Rochester in the fall. Our other National AP Scholar, Michael Reed, scored an average of 4.33 on his 9 exams, and he will be attending the University of Maryland in the fall. Even though they're not here tonight, can we take a moment to recognize them for their achievement? Beyond that, we had 355 students who took a total of 645 AP exams in 21 different subjects. The average score at Pennridge was 3.49. A total of 113 Pennridge students were recognized by the College Board for their performance in some level. 48 earned AP Scholar status. 27 were awarded AP Scholar with honor status. 36 students were awarded AP Scholar with distinction status, and Emily and Michael earned National AP Scholar status. The difference in the levels has to do with how many exams you take, as well as the scores you must receive on them, as well as your average on all the scores that you took. We do have the full list of all 113 of those students on our website, so I would encourage you, if you have not, to check that out. I was having freeze pops with the cheerleaders on Wednesday, which is not something I thought I'd ever say in my life, and they had just returned from camp. So they had been away at camp for, I don't know if it was 4 or 5 days, and they still had plenty of energy. I learned at that camp that they had won a lot of team and individual awards, and I want to recognize them. They earned superior ribbons for individual JV and varsity evaluations in rally routine, cheer, and game day band dance. They received Most Improved Program trophy for the entire team. They estimated that there were more than 50 programs that were there, so quite a feat to earn the Most Improved. Seniors Jordan Ruth and Natalie Talone, and juniors Gabby Sharp and Madison Diamante were named All-American winners in the varsity division and received an invitation to London, England for a tour and to participate in their New Year's parade. Tierney Morrison won the jump off, which I think is a good thing, in the JV division and was also named an All-American. She received an invitation to participate in the Thanksgiving Day parade in Philadelphia. Because both teams were trophy winners, they were eligible to cheer pregame at the Citrus Bowl. I do not believe they'll be able to join, but just an honor that they were able to do that. For those of you who have been at board meetings recently, you know that one of our students, Dylan Miller, has recently won a silver medal in the Skills USA National Competition. He was recognized last week at the Upper Bucks County Technical School. We just wanted to let you know that he did win a brand new 2018 Harley-Davidson motorcycle. Mr. Kraus should be very happy, valued at $22,000. It was at the school. and I know there were lots of adults who were anxious to take it for a spin. The bike will be put to good use. It's going to be a learning tool there at the school for the students to be able to interact with. Finally, I know that the board approves lots of student trips, but I wanted to give you an update on a special one just so that you understand the impact that it has on our students as well as others. I'd like to share some details about the summer's trip to Nuremberg, Germany, that 17 of our students and teachers, Leanna Goodrich and Michael Garrison, just returned from. The group spent 3.5 weeks studying at Peter Vischer Schule and staying with their host brothers and sisters. They were the same individuals, the students who were here in Pennridge in the fall. So that's a really neat exchange program. Our students attended classes taught by Goodrich and Garrison and the faculty there at PBS and made day trips to Munich, Reichenberg, Dresden, and Würzburg. They studied World War II history, very appropriate, as well as visits to a museum that was located on a former Nazi rally grounds, and had a day trip to the Flossenburg concentration camp. All of those students are going to be enrolled in German 4 or 5 in the fall, and obviously will be a wonderful resource for their classmates as they talk about the experiences that they had on that trip. As we recognized earlier, I also wanted to mention the passing of Dr. Robert Kish, who served as the superintendent of Pennridge from 1995 through 2013. Dr. Kish served the district during a time of great growth, and as I've spoken to people who knew him, was well respected for both his integrity and his complete commitment to the students of this community. Prior to coming to Pennridge, Dr. Kish served our country as a captain in the Army, and also served as a superintendent in Livingston, New Jersey for many years. Outside of his work, Bob was very active showing both horses and German shepherds. He was married to his wife, Mary Ellen, for 56 years. Not that 46 isn't impressive as well. He's married to Mary Ellen for 56 years. I was able to speak to her on a couple occasions and express our condolences and our gratitude of the entire Pennridge community. I know that Dr. Yarnell served alongside Dr. Kish for many of those years, and so I've asked him to say a few words of remembrance. Dr. Yarnell?
Thank you. And actually, I served with Dr. Kish for the entire 18 years that he was here. He was the superintendent at Pennridge for an exact 18 years, from November 1 of 1995 until October 31st of 2013. Dr. Kish was born and raised in Perth Amboy. For those of you who know New Jersey geography, it's a suburb, industrial city outside of New York City. He attended Rutgers for all 3 of his degrees. He got a bachelor's degree in English and social studies and a master's degree in guidance and counseling, and then of course his doctorate in educational leadership. As you mentioned, he was captain in the Army, but what he didn't tell people, unless he was almost forced into a corner, was that he served during the Cuban Missile Crisis, and he was in Florida prepared to go to Cuba. So, not a good time. I remember it well. It was certainly a very scary time. And he never brought it up. It was one of those things that he kept in his pocket, so to speak. From an educational experience, he served as an English teacher initially, and then as the principal at Hunterton High School, and then for 16 years, 4 at West Morris as superintendent, and 12 at Livingston, before he came to Pennridge. He was hired on a split vote. Unlike you, Dr. Bolton, he came with a 6-3 vote, took a chance on us, and stayed for quite a while. At Livingston, he had test scores that everyone dreams of. For those of you who don't know where the Livingston School District is, its perhaps most prominent feature was the Bell Labs. At that time, definitely considered the premier scientific and engineering laboratories in the world, not just in the country. And so, of course, he had a lot of very demanding scientists and engineers in his, and I know about that subject very well, in his district, but they also came with the expectation for strong education, and the test scores in Livingston ran in the high 600s on average. So he came here with the intent, at least spoken, that he would like a new challenge and try to do good things for the district. I think he proved that that was true. When he arrived, it was a time of crisis, or at least post-crisis. We had had 3 school teacher strikes, the only 3 in the history of Pennridge, in a period of 6 years and 2 in the prior 3 years, sorry. And the district had run deficits for 2 consecutive years, which obviously neither the district nor the state liked very much. I think Dr. Kish's philosophy was that children's education was first and foremost always, and he advocated for all children, not just the superstars that you've mentioned tonight with the high AP scores, but for the special needs students, the ESL students. At that time we had fewer than we have today, but we had quite a large number of those students. The 3 board members who did not choose to support him when he was made Pennridge superintendent basically objected to his salary. Just for reference, that salary was $95,000 in 1995. Beyond that, I think Dr. Kish personally interviewed all the administrators and all the teachers that came to the district, and I think on the whole, like anyone, I'm sure he didn't find all of them to be what he had hoped for, but I think many of them have. I think that's contributed greatly to the increasing quality of the district's educational program. Obviously, teachers and administrators too, to some degree, but teachers often are here for 30 or 35 years. So the people that you hired in the late 90s will be here for some time still, for the most part. One of the things that he did, which I think was fiscally absolutely incredible for the district, was that he recommended, and the board adopted, the idea of self-insurance for the district health care plan. Something that was pretty novel at the time, certainly for school districts, and something that I think has paid big benefits for us. And if you think that's wrong, simply look at things like the IU's consortium, which has really struggled, and the Bucks County Vocational School is a classic example of the difficulties that has caused for some of the schools that have entered into that situation. So it certainly was something that was worth doing. He implemented a maintenance and renovation program, as mentioned with Mrs. Venus-Clemens talking about borrowing money. The Capital Projects Fund, which we contributed money to for every year since, I believe it was 2007, allowed us to renovate and or increase the maintenance on all 7 elementary schools and 3 middle schools, perhaps not Penn Central because it was actually built and opened during his tenure. And of course the high school was both renovated and added to that time. The high school was no mean situation to go through because there, for those of you who are old enough, you can remember the lower building that sat over here in the parking, what now is the parking lot. There was a lot of sentimentality maybe is the right word about keeping the lower building, even though it was in very difficult shape. Dr. Kish invited people in, took them on tours, got to visit the rat den in the basement. It was a very interesting thing. But I think it showed the community that there really was an enormous amount of work that would have had to have been done to maintain or to continue operating that building. He was the, if you will, the person who thought and proposed the turf field that's up here on the campus that's now the stadium. Obviously another wonderfully controversial issue. He had a turf field in Livingston. Livingston was a wealthy district, so that wasn't very surprised. But I think especially this particular summer, we can all appreciate what the turf field offers. You know, if this were a grass field, it would be, like Papa Yoder was, pure mud by the fall and continue as deep mud by Thanksgiving. So it was something, and obviously the turf field is used almost continuously in evening throughout most of the school year, and can even be used in winter, unlike our grass fields, which are pretty tough to work on. I think he was certainly someone who was interested in curriculum. He hired Dr. Zielinski, who was kind of his right-hand man, or right-hand woman, I guess, properly spoken, at Livingston. As the director of curriculum, she implemented his ideas, but when he saw a problem, and a classic one was the situation where not all of our third graders were actually able to read on grade level at that point, and that's when Reading Street was introduced It was a big project, cost a lot of money, and not everyone was in favor of it. And obviously, it too has some issues, but I think it has proven valuable that we've gotten more of our students to reach that goal, which is very important, as I understand it from the educational literature, that students be able to read at grade level in 3rd grade. So all in all, I think he made major improvements for the district. I was fortunate enough to act as board president for half of his term, 9 years out of the 18. Certainly, he was a wonderful colleague to work with. At the time, I was working in Delaware, so I was a long-distance commuter. And it was a pleasure. I knew when Bob called, it was something important, and if it wasn't something important, I wouldn't get the call, and it wouldn't create a problem for my work time. And I have continued to see Dr. Kish at dinners and lunches. It's been a pleasure. Unfortunately, his health has not been the best. He, until very recently, maintained his extreme, maybe that's the wrong word, but maybe it's the right word. He, and particularly Mary Ellen, his wife, have a great, or had a great interest in the dogs, the German Shepherds that they raised. He judged. He had a dog that won best in class, and I think they're herders, but don't quote me on that because I'm not a dog person per se, but at the Westminster Kennel Club. So they were very accomplished, had a wide circle of friends, traveled after he left the district to Sutton, Massachusetts to train dogs on a farm in Massachusetts every weekend during the nice weather, the spring, summer, and fall months. So they were very active, and frankly, I will miss him.
Thank you, Dr. Yarnell. The other portion of the superintendent's report is for me to be able to publicly recognize 2 generous donations from our community. The first is a donation of $250 and 150 Frisbees from the Pennridge Chamber of Commerce. The second donation is an anonymous donation of approximately 45,000 pieces of Connects that will benefit the STEM classroom at Central Middle School. We appreciate those donations and the impact that they will have on our classrooms for these students. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bolton, and thank you, Dr. Yarnell. I can say after having gone to school in the old Pennridge High School, when I talk about it with my kids and how you had to go from the lower to the upper and you had to go outside, whether it was snowing, raining, and if you were a freshman and you had to go from the freshman center to the lower, the upper, you tell the kids that now, my kids are like, oh my gosh, that's child abuse. Okay, committee reports. Activities, Mrs. Cullen?
Thank you. I just have one motion. It's a motion to approve the 2017-18 district school year with a minimum of 900 hours of instruction at the elementary level and 990 hours of instruction at the secondary level in lieu of 180 days.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, moved by Mrs. Cullen, seconded by Mr. Kraus. Questions or comments from board members?
I was just going, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Dr. Price was going to offer kind of an explanation.
Sure.
Thank you, Mrs. Cullen. So the reason this is on here tonight, and this is a little bit after the fact, because once the state approves an emergency declaration for weather, then they ask that this is supported in minutes at a board meeting. And to be honest, we didn't realize that this was going to be required in minutes because that wasn't part of the upfront. They just changed how you apply for weather days. It was never called an emergency declaration before. And so the way it worked this time around is if you cannot meet your 180 days and you want to be assessed based on your number of hours at the secondary and elementary level, then you need to show a couple of things. One, that you've met the hours, and that's what these minutes would do. But the other piece is you have to have provided data to them of the average number of days that you lost due to weather for the last 5 years, and then tack 2 days onto that. And if you still had more than that, then odds are you were going to be approved for this request. So we averaged, well, this year was 8 days lost to weather. The 3 preceding years were kind of low compared to that. In no particular order, 4, 3, and 2 were the previous 3, and then 4 years ago it was 8 again. So you average that, you had 5, you had 2 on that 7, we had 8, so that's why they approved it. So the specific instances that they approved it for, I was only asking for certain bodies of students. And so one of them was January 8th of this past year. PM kindergarten was canceled at all elementary schools due to an early dismissal due to weather. The second request was due to the power outage at Bedminster back in March. And then finally, seniors, their 180th day would have been after the Liaison graduation. So they end up on June 13th, that's 178 days. So the request really was for seniors to be permitted to graduate based on their 990 hours requirement, and for PM kindergarten and the Bedminster school to be assessed on the 179 days. But in lieu of that, it would have been the 900 hours of instruction for grades 1 through 5 and 450 hours of instruction for the kindergarten. And so that was all approved, but now they want us to submit minutes to say that we indeed hit that number of hours. And we exceed that because we have, we started the year with 181 days, so we're actually okay. That was our first day lost to weather, so that's one of the 7 days right there. But we far exceed those hours, so we are in good shape, and we documented and sent all that in. So this vote is the minutes that we require to send in, and then there would be no subsidy loss when we submitted our hours and our pins uploaded.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments from board members?
Yes,
Okay.
just a comment. This is the first time since 1994 that we have had to go this route. Obviously, the law has changed, but in the past, you did have to apply for permission to use the hours, and we have always met both the 900 and the 990 hours pretty easily. 1994 was an unusual year. It started with a school strike, as I mentioned in talking about Dr. Kish, and was followed by 14 days of inclement weather. So the consequence of all that was, even with a lot of extra days put into the calendar here, there, and everywhere, we ended up with only 171 instructional days that year. So, it was before we went to the 184 days that we had previous to the now 181 days of instructional time, so we didn't have that cushion, plus the fact that the combination of two kind of negative events, at least from the school year point of view, pushed us into that situation. But it's been since 1994 that we've had to go this route.
I remember those days as a student too, with all the snow. I appreciated the extra days off, I'll tell you. Any other questions or comments from board members? No? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 8-0.
Okay, and the next activities meeting is scheduled for Monday, September 10th, in this room.
Thank you. Okay, curriculum?
The curriculum committee did not meet, and the next meeting is scheduled for Monday, September 10th, again in this room.
Okay. Facilities, Mrs. Dolan is not here, so I will go through this for her. The first is a motion to approve the facilities minutes.
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Cullen. Questions or comments from board members? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 8-0. Okay, the second motion, I'll make a motion to approve items A through F, obsolete items. Do I have a second? Seconded by Mr. Rice. Questions or comments from board members? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 8-0. The next motion, I'll make a motion to accept and award the following bids, A through E, for vans and buses. Do I have a second? Seconded by Mrs. Walters. Questions or comments from board members? All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes 8-0. I'll make a motion, motion to seek bids for the 2019 capital projects located on the 6-year capital projects plan. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Kraus. Questions or comments from board members? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 8-0. I'll make a motion to approve Dewey Engineering to study grass fields around the Pennridge High School and Pennridge North Middle for a potential future capital project. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Kildare. Questions or comments from board members?
Yes, I was unable to attend the Finance Facilities Committee meeting last week. Do we know what kind of improvements we wish to make here? Are we looking for a list of improvements? What is the situation?
So when we were going over the Mr. Loeffler's long book of, of projects that he had, one of the things that was on there was, over a period of time, fixing the grass fields around the whole district. And so we talked about putting those together and kind of looking to bid it out in different ways so that we could see what the most cost-effective way is to get all of these done, and in a way that it doesn't jeopardize the usage. If we do all of them at once, then obviously we wouldn't be able to use them for a couple of growing seasons. So the best way to do that, so Mr. Loeffler was going to put a couple of different options together, so that's what they're looking at, is what improvements need to be done to be able to fix those grass fields and do the drainage and releveling. Any other questions or comments?
So at the elementary schools, do the fields include the playground? I'm just remembering back from my time at Grass, the playground drainage there was an issue. So is it just the fields or the fields and the playground?
It would be all of that. It would be all of the drainage and all of the drainage that issues and field. And so they're going to go through actually and assess how much the fields are being used, because are they certain fields at certain buildings may or may not be being used. So all of that they're going to look at. But this particular part of it is just to look at the Pennridge North part. Pennridge High School and North part. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Loeffler, did I do okay on that, or did you want to add anything?
No, you did fine.
Thank you.
Am I right from here? Can you hear me?
I would go up there to set the audience. It's not just me.
Pleased with my deep, loud voice? And my last night?
Yeah, we want to get your full profile.
What's that?
I want to get your one last full profile.
Yeah, actually you did. If you remember, probably about 8 years ago, we did a survey up there with Mr. Babb, or maybe even Jeff prior to Mr. Babb, about the field usage up there. And so we do have a matrix of the usage then, and that was probably when the turf was just going down. But we'll take another look on the usage now. These fields have really never been touched. They're a little lopsided, and probably a little uneven, a little cattywampus. So I think the plan back 7 years ago was kind of take off the top 14 inches, what's up there, get the proper drainage and then replant soil. So most of it's drainage issues.
As I recall, one of the issues there, that meaning here at the high school at North, also was because of the usage, you just couldn't reseed and keep the grass in good shape because there were too many people using too little space.
Correct, yeah, mostly the football practicing up there and other groups right on top of it. So we're also going to take a look at like above North, which is, again, we're going to talk to Mr. Babb and see how it's used, but if that's strictly Yellow Jacket soccer, maybe we'll hold off and concentrate on the Pennridge students first, if we have to break it into two parts, but we're going to come back with a big plan.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 8-0. I'll make a motion to approve Dewey Engineering to study each elementary school for the purpose of adding air conditioning to the large space areas. Do I have a second? Seconded by Mrs. Walters. Questions or comments from board members? I guess I'll just add, for the audience, those, or did you want to add a little bit about the large spaces? Did you want to kind of explain that?
I would just like to clarify what is being proposed and what is not being proposed. This motion will not authorize air condition at the 7 elementary schools. This is a motion to authorize the study to what it would take and what it might cost to put air conditioning in the what I would call the 3 large spaces of each elementary school. The elementary schools currently have air conditioning in their libraries, in their computer labs, and then there are some offices and then some other spaces that, depending on the setup and how the building was originally used. This would look at their gymnasiums and their cafeterias or their multi-purpose rooms, in addition to the library, to provide 3 large academic spaces that students and teachers could utilize if the weather were such that the heat in the classrooms was oppressive. That would allow them to develop a schedule that students could rotate in at appropriate academic times. It might be for reading activities, it might be something where they take computers in and could work on computers on sort of projects where they would utilize those 3 spaces. This is not authorizing air conditioning for the elementary schools. This is to authorize a study of those to consider the possibility of what those costs might be as early as next summer.
Thank you. We did have a rough estimate so far, which is in the neighborhood of $1 million, so that's what we're looking at. Any other questions or comments from board members? Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 8-0. Okay, next committee report is for finance. Oh, I'm sorry, the next facilities meeting is scheduled for September 11th. And for finance, I will make a motion to approve the August 14th Finance Committee meeting minutes. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Cullen. Questions or comments from board members? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Motion passes 8-0. I'm going to make a motion to approve contracts A through F. Do I have a second? Seconded by Mr. Kraus. Questions or comments from board members? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 8-0. Make a motion to approve the agreement to sell meals from Pennridge School District to Bucks County IU for Head Start Early Learning Program. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Walters. Questions or comments from board members? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 8-0. I'll make a motion to approve settlement agreements for students identified as 2019-04 and 2019-05. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Cullen. Questions or comments from board members? All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes 8-0. I'm sorry, opposed? Motion passes 8-0. Sorry. And the next Finance Committee meeting is scheduled for September 11th. The next committee report is for the intermediate unit. We have not met since our last meeting. The next meeting is tomorrow. I did just want to add a little bit of clarity to one of the topics that I talked about last month, since I've learned a little bit more about it. The intermediate unit has been able to obtain contracts for the Head Start program, the pre-K counts, and they offer the early intervention for students with IEPs that are in the age ranges of 3 to 5. And so by having all of those components, what they're looking to do and what they're starting to do, and they've started this at the lower end of the county and they're working their way towards the upper end of the county, and they're really leading the way across, for all of the other counties. And what they're doing is they're taking the highest standards because, each of those different, like pre-K counts and Head Start, they have higher standards in different areas. So what they're doing is they're taking the highest standards for both of those and hiring and creating and getting the curriculum in line with all of it so that they can offer classes that meet the needs of students in both of those programs, as well as students with special needs who have IEPs and qualify for the early intervention. And what they're doing is having classrooms where they're inclusive classrooms where they're including all three groups. And by combining those together throughout the county, they're more local options because you're combining all three groups into each building, and it's making it a more inclusive setting. And so, then it's a co-teach when they include the early intervention. It's a co-teaching environment, and so it's really leading the way. And so it's something that we should be really proud of, and it's neat to see what they're doing. And we have currently a pre-K counts class that's at Diabler and one that's at West Rock Hill. And it's not completely at the co-teach model yet, but their intention is to move in that direction for all of them. So, that's what they're doing to really help with our early childhood in the county. And the other counties are watching to see what this looks like, but it's, some great things that they're doing. So just wanted to share that. The next committee report is personnel. Mrs. Walters.
Okay, I have 3 items. The first is a motion to approve Kelly Harper as Director of Operations effective September 17, 2018 at a salary of $108,483.
Thank you. Motion that was motioned by Mrs. Walters. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Rice. Questions or comments from board members? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 8-0.
With that appointment, I would like to take an opportunity to introduce Mr. Kelly Harper. Kelly, would you stand, please, so I'm bragging about you, people can see who we're talking about. Mr. Harper comes to us from a district close by that begins with the letter Q, where he has served as their Director of Operations for the past 11 years. Prior to that, he was the Assistant Plant Engineer for Montgomery County and the lead HVAC mechanic at the Montgomery County Community College. He has also taught HVAC at Delaware County Community College and recently received his Bachelor's in Business Administration from Albright College. He and his wife Valerie have 5 grown children and 4 grandchildren and live in Gilbertsville. We were fortunate to find someone as qualified as Mr. Harper, and we look forward to his many years in the district. Welcome, Kelly. I'm selling a car.
Fine.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Sure.
Okay, just press the little smiley face.
I'd like to thank the administration and the school board for giving me the opportunity to serve and join the Pennridge family. I can assure you won't be disappointed with your decision. And Mr. Loeffler, he served here a long time, and it's a big role to fill, but I'm up for the challenge. Appreciate your support for that. Thank you.
Also, with that appointment, we do need to recognize our current Director of Operations, Mr. Jeff Loeffler, who is retiring in September after 11 years as the Director of Operations in Pennridge. Mr. Loeffler is truly a son of Pennridge. He and his wife both graduated from Pennridge High School. Jeff told me it was the class of 2002. Who am I to question? And they have raised their 2 sons in this community. He was a community ice hockey coach, which I didn't know, and will be remembered for the pride that he shows in his work every day. The buildings in Pennridge are not new, but they are tremendously cared for, and that is a tribute to both Jeff's leadership and the hard work of his department. His most recent legacy will be the capital projects plan that he is leaving for Mr. Harper, and that will continue to shape the care for our facilities over the next 6 years. Jeff, congratulations on your retirement, and thank you for your service to the Pennridge community. I am sad that I will not have more time to work with you. Please do not be a stranger. Congratulations. Sell another car again.
Yep. I'll take it, thank you. Well, first.
Car comes right after.
Well, thank you. For a long time, felt like the rookie around here. And then all of a sudden, boom, you know, it's lots of new faces and a lot of people are gone and I'm the old guy around here. Thanks to Peter for
Being older?
staying here longer than me. But I met Peter 20 years ago, going back to the VOTEC days. I'm sad to say one of the last things Dr. Kish said to me was, invite me to your retirement party. So I'm a little sad about that. I was ice hockey coach for 12 years for Pennridge. I was a baseball coach for 5, 6, or 7. My oldest son graduated in 2001. I graduated in 75, before this was even built. But thanks to Sean, you've been great to work with. Thanks to the original board, and I've been able to work with almost everybody a little bit here and there, and it's been great. I'm honored to work here. I live around the corner. We have a saying, we bleed green, so appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I was saying, Dr. Bolton was pretty impressed with your ability to change the air conditioning with your cell phone when we were in a meeting from home. So I'm sure that that's one of the skills you're going to teach to Mr. Harper right off the bat, right?
So yeah, it was kind of funny to get an email, Gene, it's a little hot in here. Okay, I got you. Who told you I could do that from home?
Thanks.
Technology.
I just wanted to add one little thing. We had a building usage study, which some people might remember, and one of the things that I was kind of proud of, had nothing to do with my work, but I was proud for Pennridge, that the firm that came and did the study, one of the things they said was how impressed they were with the life left in our buildings and how well they're maintained and with the plan. So kudos to you.
Okay, the next item is I'd like to make a motion to approve the agreement between Pennridge, between the Pennridge School District and employee number 403.
Okay, motion by Mrs. Walters. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Ms. Kildare. Questions or comments from board members? All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes 8-0.
Okay, and then the last item is a motion to approve a resolution regarding employee number 8841 and employee number 7800.
Thank you. Motion by Mrs. Walters. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Yarnell. Questions or comments from board members? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 8-0.
Okay, and our next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, September 4th.
Thank you, Mrs. Walters. The next committee is policy. Ms. Kildare.
Policy did not meet. They will be meeting on September 4th.
Thank you. Next is the Upper Bucks County Technical School. Dr. Yarnell.
Thank you, Mrs. Banis-Clemens. We did meet on Thursday the 16th. I want to thank Dr. Bolton for stealing my thunder, as he does routinely seemingly, so I'll expect that in the future. The most important part by far of our meeting was that we did honor Dylan Miller as the second place, the silver medal winner at US Skills, or Skills USA. And obviously the highlight of this show, as you mentioned, was the Harley Davidson that somehow magically appeared in the boardroom at the VOTEC. An impressive machine, to be sure. And of course, Dylan won that for the school, but we should also note that Dylan won $17,500 worth of scholarships and a large array, as I understand it, worth of tools. It was an issue of how he would get them back from Louisville to Pennridge or to this area. Gift cards and various other things. And because, well, maybe not because of that scholarship, but I believe because of the scholarship, he's headed to Ohio Technical College in Cleveland, which is a well-renowned kind of school similar to Penn Tech in Williamsport, but obviously in Ohio. And so it was a good evening, and I think Pennridge has a great deal to be proud. Mr. Miller was both fortunate and obviously very talented. We opened the program for small equipment 4 years ago. He was one of the first students, and obviously he's now a graduated senior, but he benefited, I think, from a very good teacher and from his own drive to succeed, and I'm sure he'll do well in his next endeavor. Beyond that, we did note that Ms. Kathleen Plesnarski is now Dr. Plesnarski. She has gotten her doctorate from Delaware Valley University. She is the assistant director at the VOTEC. We did accept or approve a motion for the Carl D. Perkins grants that we try to obtain every year. This is for about $123,000. And they have a long list of things that they're going to do with this. Some of it is obviously assisting students with facilitators and so forth. But some of it is equipment, buying an electric cardiograph. I guess they can then tell us all that our heart isn't doing well. And a residential heat pump trainer for the plumbing technology, along with a refrigeration trainer and a 3-in-1 welder for the auto collision program. We approved some of the things that we approve all the time at this time of year. One would be the cafeteria prices. Basically, they're virtually no change. Very small changes in, I believe, 3 specific areas, but for the most part, holding the line on the prices. We approved the student handbook, and we approved the fee schedules for the dental clinic, the cosmetology, and animal technology fees. For those of you who don't know of these programs, you probably should. They're very inexpensive. I believe Mrs. Dolan said that her husband had gotten a haircut, a good haircut, she said. I don't know, but that was her comment, for $3, and the other prices are similar. So it's certainly something to consider if you're interested. We appointed Mr. Michael Herrera as the Act 44 School Safety and Security Coordinator as required by the new law, the Act 44. And we approved a Pepsi Smart program, which is an interesting concept. Pepsi will put vending machines in the cafeteria, obviously only the kinds of things, non-soda types of things that are approved by the federal government. And of the returns, 35% will go as commission to the cafeteria, which obviously, as we probably all know, cafeterias tend to struggle with costs, so this is certainly something that will be beneficial, even if it's a small amount of money, to the cafeteria at Upper Bucks. Beyond that, the one thing that I thought was interesting that was almost as a footnote, and the reason it's a footnote is because it's a fluctuating number. We expect to return 509 students to the VOTEC this coming year. We will add 242 new students, and this is as of Thursday the 16th. All bets are off what the number is today. It'll be different, but hopefully higher, but we don't know. Of those, 104 of the 242, 104 new students are from Pennridge. In addition, there is a waiting list of 55 students for programs that are already filled. There are 8 of those programs, which is a pretty healthy number. Animal tech, auto tech, carpentry, construction, culinary, healthcare, law enforcement, and welding are the full programs. Animal tech, as is often the case, is the, if you will, winner or loser. They have 21 students on the wait list, so that's a pretty significant inability to enroll students in their first choice. 751 is the projected total enrollment for next year, if that comes